Okay, then that will take us
Yes.
back to item F. And that is the 2012-13 district preliminary budget estimates, budget calendar, and possible changes to insurance and post-retirement benefits. Possibly setting a date for a special meeting to discuss in detail all these required changes. I do want to say we did have a good opportunity at our retreat to get some background information, get a preview kind of the budget that was on our agenda that night, and discuss our priorities. And I know Mr. Gorder was looking for some guidance and some lookings from us as to what we saw coming down the pipe. And with that, we did then ask the administration to look long-term at the impact that the retirement benefits currently have on our district as far as our budget, but also where we want to take that in the future. And I know that as we talked that night, we all know that we want to do whatever we can do to provide the benefits we need for our staff, our current staff, and our future staff, and to make sure that that all fits into the budget for now and for the future. So we have a lot of work to do, we know that, and we want to really keep in mind all of our staff as we look at this, and we're really got a lot of work ahead of us, but we're looking for Mr. Gorder to let us know where we're starting from and some options. So that was what we tasked them to do, is bring us forth some options.
Okay, if you can see, please feel free to move forward. Really tonight, I'm going to try to go slow and not run through this. I don't know where the best place to go in this, but I'm kind of presenting two budgets, and these are preliminary. I'm going to throw out the disclaimers right away. There is a revenue limit estimate out there I feel pretty comfortable with, but in that revenue limit estimate, I don't know state aid, I don't know the number of students. We won't get that information till well into the fall. So we're making a lot of assumptions at this point in time. We're not really sure where our grants are going. We've heard a lot of different things, but typically at this time of the year, we're not worried about our grants because it's been the expectation that when we look at grants, grant revenues equal expenditures. And we do what we need to do to make those work out. So again, I'm kind of presenting two budgets tonight. I looked at this and tried to think of the best way to present this, and I don't know that there really is a good way to present it, at least not that I'm comfortable with. But you can see I have two models up here, the Baird model and the district model.
Oops. Sorry, sorry. Oops.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, now I completely lost it. Sorry. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'll hear about it tomorrow.
Oh, no. I forget things like that.
That mouse probably work over there.
Yeah, you're probably right, thanks, Scott. Anyways, there's two budgets, so we're going to focus on the district model. Really, I try to put two models together every year just so that I know I'm within reason, and it's kind of just a reasonability check here. And as you can see, I'm within 162,000. And we look at the district model, and basically, we're using the same salary and fringes for each one of the models. I think we've got those pretty much nailed down, but there are some unknowns with that also. And then also our non-salary, you can see we did try to lower some costs in the non-salary areas. But as we look at the two models, one model, and why I say there's two budget presentations here, or two different models, is one of them includes no increases to salary or fringes. We're kind of in a whole nother realm here, not only with dollars, but also in how we view increases and decreases in the realm of salary and fringes. And then you have another model that's based on just what I put in there, what I thought. I'm not going to say they're reasonable, I just put numbers in there because, again, the one area that we're going to have to look at for next year is that we know we will be negotiating base wages for salary. So that is one thing that we'll be looking at for next year. So if you take the two different models that you see here, one shows a surplus of $212,896 and one shows a deficit. And I'll try to walk you through how we arrived at that deficit. In the first place we're going to start is on the salary. And what I did is, and I try to do this every year because Again, you'll have to negotiate that, so I don't want to put 0 in it. I don't want to put 2% in there. I want to put a number so that you can start that and get off to a fair start without any presumption one way or another. So if we look at, we know CPI is probably somewhere between 1.6 and 2% at this point in time, and that's maximum that was imposed on school districts through Act 10. They haven't set the rules, so we're really not sure what CPI, what month they're talking about, or even what CPI calculations they're using. So I just put in a 1% increase in there, and you can see if you put a 1% increase on all total salary and fringes, you're at about $184,000. The next really big item that I'm concerned about is our health insurance, and we have a health insurance committee that's met on and off pretty, I guess, regularly the last 2 or 3 years. More so last year, and then again this year. But through conversations with our current insurance carrier, WEA, we're looking at about a 15% increase, and that may or may not grow. And if you look at a 15% increase on the total that we're already currently paying, you can see that would be about $722,000 on our insurance. A lot of people might ask, where is that coming from? That's based on our experience, only Tomah's experience, so that means that we're having some trends in healthcare, and I can assure you there are some pretty serious, significant ongoing issues that we deal with. And if we look at our trend for the last 3 or 4 years, it was actually pretty good. We trended right around anywhere from a 3 to 5% increase. So in some ways, this is just the peaks and valleys that we look at as we go through trends in health insurance. Hopefully that number, again, this is only based on experience, I believe, through October or November. We'll be meeting again and trying to get this nailed down. But this is one area we've identified. We'd certainly like to get this down to a cost neutral, meaning that there is no increase. We've been talking to staff about this. They're aware of this, that we'll be looking at some pretty significant changes in this, and those changes could include potentially we will go out to bid. That means we'll be looking at different health insurance carriers. We will also be looking at co-pays on drug cards. We'll be looking at the potential of increased or adding some deductibles to this. The hope is, though, is through some of these changes, if we do have to add deductibles, that we save enough so we can maybe give some of that back to add to the, or help pay for those deductibles through an HRA. And there's some other districts that are looking at this. So our goal right now is to get this cost neutral, so there's no increase. So obviously, if we're at about $900,000, excuse me, we'd be able to deduct that. The next area on here, just got to set this to work. Anybody see the pointer?
No. Go back to cookie one time. Do you want to do that?
There it is.
Okay, the next area that we're looking at is the dental. Actually, in the big scheme of things, when you're looking at a $35 million budget, a $1,600 increase, I'm not too concerned about that. Again, I want to emphasize that our staff, all staff, will now be required to pay the employees' portion of their retirement to the Wisconsin retirement system. 1/2 of that, and that does include our support staff. Last year that included administration, central office, and our professional staff. We also still have to account, though, that we have the employer's portion, and I think if you're paying attention to the WRS right now, although there's not a very big increase in this current year, I think as you forecast going forward, you're going to see bigger increases in the Wisconsin retirement system on what employers are required to contribute towards the retirement system. We've seen projections, currently it's at about 11.5 right now. We've seen projections that growing to about 14%. We've seen them in the past. Part of that is just due to the amount of retirees, and that's a little bit related to what has happened with Act 10, but a lot of that is just the bubble that is going through right now overall in the state of Wisconsin. So having said that, we're estimating we'll probably need to find about $135,000 for that. Now keep in mind, typically in the past, when we've looked at salary and fringe increase, we looked at it, through the eyes, at least from the employer side of it, a 3.8% increase. But this still, when we're looking at the overall budget, we still have to find those dollars. The expectation is that the employer still is going to cover that. That isn't something that we would ask staff to cover at this point in time. Again, obviously, if you're increasing 1% on your salary, you still have to find dollars for your FICA tax. Again, I don't expect that to be too significant. Long-term disability insurance, very minimal. But the other one that probably has a significant dollar value to it is long-term care. This is put in through negotiations probably, I believe, 3 or 4 years ago. We will be looking at potentially eliminating the long-term care. Now this is full of potential issues. One of them is and right now we're talking to our school attorney to actually find out what we can and can't do with this, because currently you have retirees that are taking advantage of that retired under that language. So we'll have to see whether that can be accomplished or not accomplished. Something can be, it's just the degree to what we can do. But if you factor that $251,900 in here, you end up with about a $50,000 surplus in the end. And that, again, that's with a lot of unknowns. And again, the WA Life down here, valued at about $5,000, was implemented to get a better rate with the long-term care from WEA. So we would look at eliminating that also and keeping the Minnesota Life that is currently and has been with the district for many, many years. So as we come back up to the top, you can see that this $927,000, I must have not saved it last time too, but over here you would see a surplus of about $51,000 if we're able to, and these are big ifs. We're not sure where the experience is going yet with the insurance. Hopefully it's less than 15, but I don't know. And again, I don't remember the last time we had a 15% increase, but has it ever been that you're aware of? But we're running at that right now. So we'll just have to see how that shakes out. And again, I don't attribute that to anything else, and that's just where we're at with our group right now. That's not WEA raising the prices on us. They're trying to be competitive. It's again more to do with our experience in the Tomah School District. That's your preliminary budget for 2012, 2013. Again, I cannot emphasize enough that there are a lot of unknowns in this budget here. Typically, this is what we're doing in June, so you can see we're far ahead of the curve with this. Now, one thing I guess I should point out that I didn't, if you take a look at that revenue limit sheet, I think this is really important for everybody to hear. Typically, we get about a $200 increase per student. This year, we're only getting a $50 increase per student. We have approximately 3,000 students. If you look at that 3-year rolling average, it might be just slightly more than that. But if you take 50 times 3,000, I think that means that we have an additional $150,000 that we can use to offset any increases in costs. But when I go down and take a look at, again, the salary, just a minimal 1% increase on salaries, you don't even have enough money to cover the $184,000 increase on the salaries. So when we talk about the budget in a whole, you kind of get a picture of why there are not dollars there to cover some of the costs and to provide more. And again, with the salary and fringes, I have calculated in here not just a 1% increase, but also the cost if you're still going to honor credits as you're going across. So it's that those folks who are taking credits would still be able to get reimbursed for some of those costs. So that's what I have for the budget. I don't know if I missed anything from the Finance Committee there.
I don't think so. Unfortunately, it sounds the same, Greg.
And when I talk about the credits too, the one thing we need to know is that that's just talking about the dollar rate that is for some of the movement on the salary schedule, but not all of it. It just depends. So.
Really appreciate the scenario-based approach, though, that we can look at various scenarios and understand that nothing's in writing until it is.
And I know it's difficult for you because obviously, like you said, typically you're doing this in June, where at least you have some more unknowns known, a few more unknowns known, but it's very difficult to know where we'll be.
So it's pretty basic, pretty straightforward and to the point. Not all that complicated at this point. The next thing is we talk about, because it's all connected, none of it sits in isolation, is we take a look at the post-retirement benefits. This is not complicated, but the sheet that I gave you is very busy. Okay? We initially started out with one proposal. We talked to various staff members about that, and it became very obvious at that point in time that we needed to develop more proposals. We shared one proposal at the board retreat. So we've put together basically 5 different proposals, and they really range from worst case scenario to what we currently have here. And the problem with the retirement, okay, I'm just going to say it right off bat, if we change it, lines are going to get drawn. And somebody is going to be on one side of the line, and somebody is going to be on the other side of the line. So your task really will be is where do you want to draw those lines? I will give you some options here and at least give you an idea how the dollars flow and what they do or don't do for us. You may get done with this presentation and say, I want to see some more options. Okay, you may not. I mean, I'm sure there will be more discussion of this. But I think the first place we have to start really is the current language. The one thing I do know for sure, and I was told that might even be for sure because the Mayan calendar ends pretty soon here, so I was relatively sure that these years would flow like this. But we'll wait and see. So we build this whole scenario around assumptions. And the assumptions are based on the current contract language because that's all we have to work on. And that contract language states the rule is 75, meaning in order to be eligible, that doesn't mean you're going to retire then, but to be eligible you have to be at least 55 years of age and your years of service plus your age need to equal 75. Okay? So as we're going through that, those are the assumptions that I made. Now we do know those that retire in 11 and 12, those 23, are eligible to get the full contract because the contract doesn't expire until midnight on 6/30/2012. So for the most part, I'm relatively certain those people will take advantage of the contract language and move out. But what happens after 11/12 for those retiring after 6/30/2012 will depend a lot on what you decide. But having said that, we're still going with making the assumption that they're retiring here. So I know that, so when you're looking at these assumptions, how can you say these people were retired? I don't know. I don't know everybody's individual situation, so I'm just applying the rules that we've had in the past. The other thing that I think we need to kind of get out of this discussion right away is how did we get here? Okay? There was a point in time when Tomah did it, but this idea has been around a long time now. And before insurance rates went from here to here, this was negotiated through contract negotiations. But I'll tell you right now that at the times that they were initially put in, it was a win-win, both for the employer and the staff member. And why I say that is, employers, when this initial language was put in, wanted to give the option to teachers to retire early because they wanted to see the savings between the person at the high end of the schedule and the new person coming in. And there is some savings there, and I'll talk about that just a little bit. But there was another reason for that is because they wanted to reinvigorate the classrooms because people just get tired after 60. I think we sometimes realize, is that rule, can we apply that across the board? No, we can't apply that across the board. But not to talk about that, not to say that, would not be giving this language, I guess, its credibility, because that's why it was there. I don't think anybody would probably disagree with that. So as we're looking at the language, that's kind of how it came into existence. So if we talk, let's just talk about the savings a little bit. And the savings has shrunk considerably. Obviously, when you have expensive insurance plans, the difference between those retiring and their salary and fringe is not as great. So if I took the 23 staff right now that are retiring, and I take their total salary and fringe, and I take what we averaged last year for all of our new hires, and I take and put those in for the replacement cost for salary and fringe, I then subtract each one off. I either come up with a positive or negative numbers. And in some cases, it's not always positive. Some cases, it's negative. I add both costs up on each side. Okay, so I have a number on the bottom. Then I have to factor in the cost of a retirement plan for those retiring, okay, for the most part, or if they're going out on a different part of the language. And then at that point in time, I take a look at taking the, getting tongue-tied here, but after I add up, take the savings between the retirees and the new people coming in, then I subtract off the cost of the insurance plan. The district netted $51,000 next year. Again, that's based on assumptions. It's not based on because I don't know that they're all going to go. I'm assuming they will. So as you take a look at that, the district netted $51,000. The problem with that is that those new people who are hired are going to move across a salary schedule, not very fast at 1% or even 2%, but the bigger concern is a lot of them are hired at a single insurance plan, so that means at some point in time, more than likely, again, not all, but probably the majority will end up moving to a family plan. And the difference between a single and a family plan right now is about $13,604. So it doesn't take a long time to take that net of $51,000 and eat it up. Okay? So that kind of sets the stage for everything you're going to look at now. Current contract language as we look at this, annual insurance premium rate. Now I'm making the assumptions most people have an idea what the contract is, because if I was going to put the contract in here, I need 3 pages for each scenario, and I don't want to do that. So the current contract language states annual insurance premium rate at retirement for 7 years. It evaporates on 6/30 of 2013, according to the contract. Or $4,000 for each year's of service not to exceed 40 years. And then that's for staff that were hired prior to the 2007-2008 school year. Those hired after the 27 or during or after 07-08 receive $1,500. And the budget amounts that you see here, again, are calculated using this language for that year for that number of retirees. So we want to just go across real quickly. Well, as I stated, if we look at 12-13, you see a significant jump in the budget, but the actual impact of that is cost neutral because of the difference of those retiring and the new staff coming in. And again, I said that the district actually netted $51,000. But over the course of the time, those 11 new people too, that's going to disappear very quickly. Matter of fact, at a simple 1% increase at $187,000, that money gets gobbled up pretty quick. So let's just move across and give you some ideas what we're talking about. 11-12, our budget is $1,155,000. It climbs to $1.5 million, and again, I'm going to abbreviate those numbers for you. and then to about $1.75 million in 13-14. And then it's going to peak in 16-17 at about $1.9 million. So and I have a graph, if you look at the graph, you're going to see the graph go like this, real quick. It's going to climb real quick. But if you notice the numbers, 17-18, 18-19, 19-20, 20-21, you can see it drops just as quickly. It went up, it's coming down. I will tell you though, that is a lifetime in school finance. So to try to even predict out and have any idea what school finance will look like 9 years from now, we can't even have a clue of what it'll look like a year from now or 2 years from now with any degree of certainty. Actually, I can't even do it in 6 months. But again, those dollars, now once those retirees finish with their retirement for health insurance, those dollars come back to the district. But you have to take that $187,000 over 9 years, and that's at a 1%, that easily gets gobbled up pretty quickly, that 1.9 to that $9 million decrease there. And that doesn't include any new staff members, again, moving from a single to a family. So I would submit that as our current contract language. And matter of fact, when I look at budget figures, that $1,528,738 is what I used. So the next scenario that we took a look at, I don't say we took a look at, but again, we said we presented one initially as an alternative to the contract language. It became very clear that you guys will probably need to see more of that. Our next proposal then basically is, okay, we're going to change for any new staff hired during or after the 07-08 school year, we're going to change it from $1,500 to $1,000. And as you look across that, you can see the savings in 13-14 would be about $5,000. And then it's going to, as you go across that graph, it slowly moves up till you're at about $84,000 in the year 2028. So you're not seeing a lot of savings, but you're seeing some savings during those years. I would just run by that real quick. You can see in 14-15 it's $6,500, $12,000, $15,500. And I believe when they finally get out there, it's about $84,000. So the third scenario we looked at was a step down. And what the step down would mean is that, we have to understand that for those retiring in the current year 11 and 12, they are currently under contract and will be eligible to receive, again, this language up here. So the dollars don't change. These 23, although they retire in 11 and 12, they don't affect the budget until 12-13. Okay? So nothing has changed there. We see that very clearly. Then we would start stepping down. For those then eligible in 12-13, you would step down immediately to $4,000. They would no longer be eligible. So this language that evaporated on 6/30 of 2/13, you would actually eliminate this particular language here, and you would say we're only going to honor that language through 6/30 of 2012. So then the only thing after this, the retirees retire this year, is going to be $4,000 for those that retire in 12-13. And you can see that savings, again in 13-14, would be $66,712 that the district would get back. Then for the next 4 years, and I will move it out as you look at it, but for the next 4 years from 13, for those that retire in 13-14 through 16-17, they would get $3,000 per year of service. Okay? And I needed the exercise anyways.
Do you want me to?
No, that's all right.
I'm afraid I'll.
I don't want to lose my, no, I didn't mean it like that.
Yes, you did.
You would see, here's the 66,000, then you would save 85,000, 122, 144, and 163, 210, and you can push that out. Obviously, you're starting to save money. And that's because after, let's see, I gotta go back, after we look at the contract language, for anybody who retires after 16, 17, then the benefit would move from 3,000 to 2,000. Again, the premise for this language is that it gives at least people some time to prepare. Okay? And again, the problem with this scenario is the line gets drawn somewhere. You're either going to be on one side of the line or the other side of the line. We have to be thinking about one other thing as we're going through these things. It's not just the savings that we're taking and we're saying, hey, we want this for the district, okay, because we want to do whatever. But our current staff, and as you saw, we need to find dollars in the short term for the next year or two, and it's going to be difficult to be competitive with our salary and fringes for those that still are actively employed. So we need to free up these dollars so that we can stay competitive. That's where these dollars go. If they don't go there, they go to programs, because one or the other has to give if you're only getting $50 per student. So this isn't built with the idea that we just want to take from retirees. It's trying to look at balancing everything that you have to do, and that's the options that we're trying to give you, is give you options to balance a whole lot of different issues here. So you can, again, walk across that and you can see the different dollar savings here by those reductions. The next scenario now it starts to change a little bit, and we're getting a little bit more, we're pushing it, saying, you know what, we need the dollars, we need them now, so we're getting a little bit more. Actually, this one won't quite do it. But this would be honoring the contract language right now to 630 to 213, meaning the people in these years would be able to retire under this language, and you would go then, for these people in 13, 14, you would drop, you would no longer have the $4,000 available to you, would go right to $2,000. You can see the savings. Now the savings in the short run is less than the savings on the step down, okay? But in the long run, this starts to save us money. And that's because obviously we're offering those folks a little bit better benefit than on this. But the issue is when you go back and start looking at the budget, we need those savings really in some ways right now. You know, and then I think with the decreases on what you're going to see overall in the budgets, if you make one of these changes, that will kind of balance itself out. And I have a graph again that will show that a little bit nicer. And again, as I went through these different scenarios, anybody hired after 07, 08, they would move from the 1,500 to the 1,000. That's on all the proposals that you're seeing now. Is that pretty clear? Okay. So we can move down to the next scenario. And again, this would be, we honor the contract through 6/30 of 2012, and then beginning for those that retire anytime after 6/30 of 2012, you don't get 4,000, you go right to 2,000. Okay? And if that scenario was to hold true, the district would save $113,973. Versus, you can see the $66,712 and the $5,000. So we're starting to eliminate that benefit as quickly as possible. And again, if you push that out, you're able to see the numbers. The last scenario, I don't want to do that. Eliminates the benefit completely.
Can't read that at all.
What's that?
You can't read it at all.
Can't read it, sorry.
The colors. That's what it is.
Well, and that's what it is,
Yeah.
as you said here, is you eliminate that benefit completely as of 6/30/2012, meaning the only people that will get anything that are those that are retiring in this current year. And then the language gone. And you can see the savings, significant savings. Right thing to do? Not sure about that. So you have quite a few different scenarios here. They're not all the scenarios that you could do. But as we take a look at this, part of our goal is to get through, obviously, 12-13, but the next 2 years after that. I have no reason to believe we're going to have any more money in 13-14 or 14-15 at this point in time. So the issue really boils down to really two things that I think the board, the easy thing is just to say we need to eliminate this as quickly as possible, take our savings as run, but there are consequences for doing that, as we talked about in the Finance Committee. One of them is a fairness issue, and the second one is how long do you want staff in classrooms? I'm trying to be very careful the way I say that, okay? But I say that because that's how the language was initially negotiated between the employers and the teachers. People just get tired. And if you're trying to increase test scores and you want the most energetic people that are ready to go, I don't know. Again, I'm trying to be very sensitive because there has surely been many, many staff members in the Tomah School District who taught between the ages of 60 and 65 and have been very, very successful. That's what I have for you tonight to think about. I'm sure there's quite a few things that I missed from Finance Committee. There's a lot here. You can change the lines, you can move the lines, but ultimately there's going to be somebody on one side of the line and somebody on the other side of the line. Questions?
Greg, I know in finance, I think you've stated it very well. We talked, like you said, and when we talked there and we talked at the retreat too, we know that we want to do all we can to provide salary and benefits for the current employees, for those that are soon to retire, and then looking at those retirement benefits. And we want to do all we can do to be fair to everyone. But with that too, we have to know that we have to be fair to the employees that remain. We have to preserve as many programs as we can, so we've got a big job ahead of us, and we know that. So that's why I'm glad that you did come up with more options than we discussed at the retreat. That gives us a start and gives us somewhere to go.
And again, if there was a specific scenario you wanted to see, certainly we would like to not see 50 of them, but if there were one or two maybe other scenarios, we certainly could ask for those scenarios.
Well, it's kind of a lot to digest right off the bat, and I know that's, with that, we felt that we would have to have this point to start with, and then perhaps have another meeting where we can really delve into it and ask questions once we've had a chance to look it over and really figure out what questions we even want to ask.
Right, and there are graphs attached, and they just really emphasize it going up and coming down, and sooner or later, and it's when we're talking sooner or later, we're talking obviously through 2040, somewhere around 2028, you start to see that line as you look at the graph here where I'm kind of circling around, and it doesn't matter which line that you circle, that line's going to start to flatten out, because on an average, you'll have 8 retirees a year and it'll be very consistent. Really what we're dealing with here, to a certain degree, why this is popping up so high, is that you had approximately 11 staff members retire in 9-10. 10-11, you had 23. You'll have probably 23 this year, and 11 next year. So you've really pushed a big bubble through. And again, I want to emphasize that's been, for the most part, pretty much cost neutral. But that savings that used to last over the course of that retiree's retirement is now down to a year to 2 years, depending on how many people come in at a single in a family.
Not that this is here or there with the budget, but if we have a bubble of retirees and then we've hired some people, will that cause a bubble?
No, because, and that's a good question, Pam. The reason for that is we look at this $1,500 and $1,000. What's happening with that dollars is we're pre-funding those, meaning those money are getting set aside every year in account for those teachers that have been hired from either in 07 or after 07, 08. So we will not see that bubble at any time in the, again.
Greg, do you see in the future the status of what has happened in Madison change? I mean, they've cut back on school districts to the hilt. And we had a nice article in La Crosse paper about Tomah. And Cindy, what'd you say, there were 2 other ones they were going to analyze?
They did Bangor today, and I'm not sure what the third school
and
district
the
is.
status that comes out of Madison with the money appropriated to the school district to run their school. Do you see that changing in the future at all?
Gary, as much as I have my opinions, I can't answer that question. All I can tell you with certainty, at $50 an increase per student, that doesn't cover a 1% increase for salary and fringe. That's going to be very difficult to maintain a quality education for kids in the Tomah area school district. And I would also preference, this year we lost 10% on our state aid, which resulted in an increase in our levy. Next year we're looking at probably another 10% decrease, depending again on the assumptions, which is going to have another levy increase next year. So,
well, certainly it's beyond us, Greg, this whole situation. Right. I mean, we can't do anything here tonight, but the structure has got to change down in the center of our state somehow. Not only there in Madison, but further on in D.C. We can scrutinize this thing all we want as board members, and it's going to be extremely difficult to come up with a scenario that'll work. But somebody has got to get into the mix above us to change our structure a little bit here.
That's not going to happen for a while, and we've got a budget that we've got to look at.
That's what I'm saying,
And we're going to have to take it a year at a time.
Right.
And we've got to...
exist.
Well, we have to make sure the students are getting a good education, the staff are being paid fairly, and...
the other thing we haven't
fewer
talked about yet
dollars.
is competition.
Yeah.
We're going to have to compete with La Crosse, we're going to have to compete with Onalaska, we're going to have to compete with Holman and the other districts. And I know people wanted to see this information. I know they want you to make a decision, and you can make a decision, but in some ways it would be nice to see where the competition falls out here a little bit too, so that we're not just making a decision. But then on the other hand, there's a flip side to everything that you say here, is that realistically, you're looking at cutting a benefit that people, and again, it doesn't matter where you count the line, you're cutting it in half. And that's significant. To think that this doesn't significantly alter people's plans is hugely false. Unlike other businesses where typically if you have a bad year, sometimes you get to make those up. As much as Judy just said that things aren't going to change, you're not going to make up what you're losing here on a 2% increase. You're not going to make it up on the stock market. What people have lost from 2008. Those are things that everybody has to deal with. I'm not saying this for any other reason, but there's some limitations here. So as you look at the extremes of both scenarios, you need to kind of factor that into a little bit. So.
And we don't have information yet from the school lawyer as far as the language and...
On the long-term care?
Yeah, the long-term care. And
no, we're in the process of getting that language. It's complicated. The problem is just as much as anybody's retired with a benefit and you can't take that benefit away, this has been promised as a benefit, so how do you take that away from something that somebody's been promised? So I don't know. I think the worst case scenario would be to see that you start asking staff to pay for 50% of it. Because again, either way you cut this, whether you're talking about health insurance, deductibles, co-pays, or whatever, those are real dollars. And if you look at the real dollars that staff have already lost, it's going to add up real quick. And therein lies the decisions you have to make is when do you stop?
And also the
help you with
language
that.
for the evaporates on 6/30/2013 or 6/30/2012.
Say that again, please.
The current language, the annual insurance premium rate at retirement for 7 years evaporates. We've got two different dates that we're looking at, and we need
That
to
does?
clarify that also, correct?
If you look at the current contract language, go ahead, Cindy.
I was just going to say, we did speak with our school attorney, and the contract ceases on June 30th, 2012. So we didn't change that evaporation language because there wasn't a need to, because the contract is over with.
Okay.
So that's been clarified. You can evaporate that.
You can eliminate
This year.
all benefits
Yeah.
after 7/1/2012.
On
7/1/2012. If you think that's the right thing to do.
Okay.
Now, the purpose of decreasing the expenses is, one, we have less money coming in, so we have less to spend, so we have to decrease expenses, but also decreasing that to be what you call the surplus. That surplus then could be applied to salaries,
To active employees.
to active
Salary and fringes.
employees. That is why we're looking at this, correct?
Correct. Because you will need to be competitive too, again, on an annual basis.
Greg, the mechanism for $1,500 for teachers hired during or after the 07-08 school year, where did that come from?
That was through negotiations, and that's thank you for bringing that point up, is that we've changed this language. I know it was first changed 3 or 4 years ago, was the first change, and I believe there was a change even prior to that. I'm not really sure what that language was prior to it being 7 years.
10 years.
It was 10 years, thank you. So there have been concessions over the years to get this down. And that $1,500 was a recognition that we need to do something, and we need to do something, actually rather soon for those new employees. And instead of promising them a promise that we knew we were probably not going to fulfill, it was determined through negotiations that you would end the 4,000 or the 7 years, and then instead of doing that, you would start pre-funding $1,500 into an account for those people.
That change took place in that 07-08
Yes,
school
correct.
year. And what would you figure is the percentage of our current teachers in the two groups?
Boy, that's the only question I didn't think about, but as you're looking at it, I'm going to go with you had 11 retire, probably 9, 10, 23, so I think we probably have, let's just say 40 staff members out of how many professional staff, 250? So whatever that percentage is.
That are what?
That would be under that 15.
Well, 1/5, a fifth of the staff, is that? Yeah.
By far, most of the teachers are in the pre-07-08.
Yes, absolutely.
And there was certainly recognition. I mean, the original contract also has in there that evaporation date on 6/30/2013. I know there was recognition by all then that probably there'd be some other change that would come, but who knew what that would be. Well, that current language was expiring then, right? Because then after that point, it would be the $4,000.
Yes, just the first part of that, the insurance premium rate at the rate you retire for 7 years, that was scheduled to evaporate on 6/30/2013.
Right, so the vast majority really
Would receive that
would be
$4,000.
that $4,000 per year of service.
Yep.
So,
And that's a significant savings. If you look at 7 years, the value of that benefit probably is approximately, $160,000. I'm rounding that up. I'm using current annual family insurance rate, which most folks will go out on, versus on an average, if you were going to retire at 55. Now, I know that's probably no longer going to happen depending on what option you use here. It's probably moving, if it's 60, it might be 62 or 63, so at 55, the average years of experience is right around 30, so the value is $120,000. So there's a significant savings in that alone to the district. You know what, in 2 or 3 years ago, had nothing changed, you probably might have been able to manage that. I would assume if we entered into contract negotiations like we were scheduled to, that, obviously one of our proposals would have been to reduce this in some form or fashion, as it has been for the last 3 or 4 years, or 2 or 3 contract negotiations. So, I think we know we would have tried to have done something. Where it would have shook out at, you can only speculate here. So the dollars aren't the only, you can focus on the dollars, but the dollars are not the whole story or the whole answer. You have 2 other pieces that you need to focus on. I believe one is, and Cindy and I have talked about this a lot, one is what's fair, and then 2 is, when do you believe you want to start moving staff members from teaching into retirement so you can make that change? And again, I'm trying to do that with as much respect as I can, but again, I go back to why the language is in there, and I just got a feeling that if you don't maintain something, you will be addressing this issue in some form or fashion 5 years from now. That will be an issue again.
So when will be the next time we discuss this? Do we have a...
well, we think, I think we talked about having a special meeting just to discuss this, and we can do that, and then we would still be able to decide on an actual plan at our February meeting. But I think we want a meeting to really hash it out and discuss it. So I guess we'd be looking for a date that we want to do that on.
Before or after the February meeting?
Oh, before.
So the sequence of events is, the goal is to have a decision made by the February board meeting, to get a meeting in between now and then with the full board, special board meeting to further discuss what has been put out there so that you have plenty of time to make that decision.
And then we also discussed that perhaps finance will want to even meet before that, so they're very up to speed on what exactly everything it is, and so that we can make that recommendation to the full board then, to that. So, well, we typically, policy is the first Tuesday, so that is actually kind of late in the month this time. It's February 7th.
We hook on to facility again.
Sure, if you want to.
February 1st, we have a 4 o'clock meeting.
Okay.
And we were done at 5:30 last time, 5:20, the last meeting. But I don't think Pam can start until, what time, Pam?
The first is my late day, so I don't get off till 6:30.
First is a no-go for me too.
So that's a no-go for you?
Okay.
I was going to suggest either Monday the 30th or Monday the 6th.
Monday the 30th is open.
That's open for you? The 30th?
That is Monday the 30th.
That's fine.
I think so.
That works. How about for you?
I have a committee meeting till 5, but after 5.
We can do after 5. What works for your
5:30?
time? 5:30?
5:30? Does that work?
30 hours.
Yeah. 5:30 work for you?
So do we say 5:30 to 7:30 or?
5:30 to 7:30, yeah.
District office are here.
District office?
I think probably here will be better if we
We can
want,
use the
yeah,
overheads,
Yeah.
okay, and space.
in case people do
And
come
then
to
there's
share.
plenty of space also, so it's not...
One consideration there, Cindy, is there is a advanced placement special education workshop in here
Oh.
until 4 o'clock. But I don't think there'd be a problem by 5:30 to do the setup.
Okay.
Okay.
When you say 5:30, is that when yours clears, or is that when you want to start?
I can get here by 5:30.
So Monday, January 30th, 5:30 to 7:30? Right here.
It'll be a special board meeting strictly focusing on retirement.
Retirement. And budget. We would probably look at finance after that.
February 30th.
So focusing on
February.
retirement options and the budget?
Should we do budget also? How that plays into it, or we really need to? There
I
won't
don't
be any
really think you
changes.
need, at this point in time, we won't have any information from the insurance review
So
committee.
just retirement. Okay.
And then did you say the finance will meet before that?
Before our February meeting at some point, so we're
Oh,
okay with...
Oh, I can see. So in between now and the
Yeah.
board meeting? in February.
We may have to do, or maybe we just do a longer meeting. We'll see how it goes, yeah. Yeah. Prior to the regular meeting, too. Okay. We're taking on to policy or something before or something.